In the backyard of my mother's house, I have buried a cat, a lizard, 2 hermit crabs, and a placenta. Oh, no. Yeah, I did. I became pregnant with my first child, my daughter Virginia, when my husband and I were living in England. And when I went to one of the first prenatal visits, the nurse said, "So, do you want to have your baby in the hospital or at home?" And I said, "Actually, we're moving back to the U.S. before I have the baby." But that made me realize that I needed to start making some of these plans, look for the doctor I was going to have in the U.S., and think about what the whole birth thing would be like. And so I started thinking about the kind of birth that I wanted to have and how I was going to have that. And the more research that I did, the more I realized that to have the kind of birth that I wanted to have, I was going to have to do it at home. And there were a lot of reasons behind this, but one of them had to do with just the stress of all the people that are around in the hospital room. And, you know, I can't poop if I think someone in the next room is listening to me. So there was no way I was going to squeeze out a child with no drugs, you know, with doctors looking up my vagina every few minutes. That was not going to happen. So I planned the home birth, and John and I moved back to Georgia. I found some home birth midwives, and we started making our plans. I knew the why of the home birth. I was working out the how. I started asking all the what ifs, mostly because other people would ask me the what ifs. What if you have a hemorrhage? And so I asked the midwives, and they said, "Oh, we can take care of that." So then at one of my prenatal visits with the midwives, one of the midwives asked me, "So what are you going to do with the placenta?" And I said, "What do you mean, what am I going to do with the placenta?" And she said, "Well, I mean, we can take it away for you if you really want us to, but usually the clients keep it and do something with it." And I said, like what? She said, "Well, you know, some people have them dried and encapsulated, and then they take the pills because it helps to regulate your hormones after childbirth." And I was just entering into the world of crunchy parenthood at this point, and I was not ready for placenta eating. On a side note, after my second child was born, we did keep the placenta. I didn't have enough money to have it encapsulated, so we blended it, put it in an ice cube tray, and then I added placenta ice cubes to smoothies. And I will say, I was a lot happier after my second birth. But back to the first pregnancy, I was not prepared to be ingesting any placenta. And so I said, okay, what else? What are my other options? And she said, "Well, you know," she said, "you can bury it, or you can throw it out with the trash, but you really should leave it in the freezer until trash day, because otherwise neighborhood animals could get it." And I guess I was kind of looking at her like, is there anything else? And she said, "Well, some people donate them to the police station because they use them to train cadaver dogs." I guess there's a shortage of like actual cadavers that are donated to the police. And placenta, it has that human smell, and they can use it to train cadaver dogs. So I thought, okay, this is a good option, because then I'm doing some good with my placenta, and I am not actually responsible for disposing of it. So I thought that was a good plan. So Virginia was born at home. I did have a hemorrhage, which the midwife stopped, so everyone was happy and healthy. They put the placenta in a plastic bag and put it in the freezer for me. And then I got on with the whole thing of having a newborn child, and I kind of forgot about the placenta in the freezer. But we were living in my mom's house, and so several months later, I got a job. We were going to move on, and I realized that my mom probably didn't want to have a placenta in the freezer, and I would need to finally actually do something about it. So I went on the internet to see about donating it to the police like I had planned, and I found out that they really like to have fresh placenta. Like a couple of days old, not like months and months in the freezer. So that was out. I still didn't love the idea of just throwing it away, so I thought, okay, well, I'll bury it in the backyard. But I didn't want to just bury it in the backyard because, you know, the placenta it's a beautiful thing. It's supposed to nourish life. And so I dug a hole in the backyard, I put the placenta in it, and then I planted an azalea on top of it. And then the azalea could, you know, draw its nourishment from the placenta. And to this day, my mother has a large and flourishing azalea bush in her backyard because placentas are good for babies, for mothers, and for azaleas.